tax lawyer in Brazil. Actually, I deal with a lot of tax advisory on international tax matters and also in indirect tax matters, so consumption taxes. And I try to solve one of the greatest problems in Brazil, which is to make the whole business structure work out without spending too much more than we should on taxes. In the beginning, I used to work with one of the big four auditing firms, and then I migrated, after some years, I migrated to a well-known law firm in Brazil, and after some years of experience, I also founded my own law firm, and that's what I'm doing now. So we have the union, so the federal government, the state government, and the municipal government. Each of them has its particular taxes as foreseen in our constitution, and actually we have taxes for almost all facts. So for services, for selling goods, for the sale of goods, for profits, for revenue, turnovers, over remittances to abroad, over most of the factors of the normal facts of our business life. They are divided among these governments. So, for instance, the federal union gets the share for income taxes, which are basically two: the imposto de renda and the contribuição social sobre o lucro líquido, like the CIT and the social contribution over the net profit. Besides that, they also have a consumption taxes levied on industrialized products called IPI, Imposto sobre Produtos Industrializados. The state level, the most relevant tax is the ICMS. It's a tax levied on the commercialization of merchandise, of goods, and also on certain specific kinds of services, basically communication services, and also certain kinds of transport, intermunicipal and interstate transports. In the municipal level, we reach the municipalities, they tax services, basically, and also some kinds of property. So, urban property. Mm-hmm. So these are the most relevant taxes in Brazil. So Brazil is one of the countries, from my knowledge, it's the only country where you structure your business thinking on taxes and not otherwise. Depending on the way you structure your business, the taxes levied over all operations may change. So it's the taxes, the way you do business in Brazil will not be tax neutral. So I think this is the main point. And in this sense, sometimes the choice between business models will strongly rely on the taxation and how you can structure your business in order to have a more positive impact on your balance sheets. Normally, when international companies start up in Brazil, normally they choose to start with a local distributor because the companies try to understand how, if the business works in the Brazilian market. Second, because normally a local distributor will understand better how the logistics of the sale should happen in order to maximize your profits. And also the third level, because we have certain specific rules that may turn really complicated to establish a company and start to import. You have to create a company because in certain markets, like in the US or Europe, you have certain legal figures that allow you to import and conduct business without incorporating a company, without creating a corporation in that country. Incorporating a company in Brazil, it's simple, but it's time consuming. Although it's not that complicated from a legal perspective, things in Brazil take a long time to happen. So you cannot expect to incorporate a company and have it running in 1 month. It will not happen. And just after that, you may go and apply for the licenses to import. Normally, when we advise companies that want to know how much tax will be levied when you import a product, we estimate, we should estimate that around half, 50% will be levied, only on taxes. However, this is an estimation. Actually, the import tax, the customs duties, and also the IPI, which is also levied on the importation of products, they vary according to the product. So we have to make a consultation and try to know which are the specific rates applicable to each product in order to better estimate it. Normally, finished products are taxed at a higher level than inputs, and that's for a logical reason, because Brazil wants to favor local production. So normally, when we talk only about the import tax, the import taxes, the customs duties will be lower when we deal with inputs, and higher when we deal with finished products. That does not mean that your overall tax burden will be lower when you manufacture in Brazil, because there are other costs associated there too. So when you choose to manufacture in Brazil, we must also consider the social contributions, which are high in Brazil, the other taxes, which are also levied, the logistics impact, how do you work with unions, the labor costs, the costs of owning a place, a factory, and I mean the costs of installing a factory. That many of the machinery you need in Brazil must be imported still, and so there are other costs associated there too. So that's also something that demands some planning. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, it's true. When normally, especially in highly industrialized states, such as São Paulo, for example, it may take you much more time than 1 or 2 months, maybe 3 or 4 or even 5 months, based on the need that industrial companies have to obtain environmental licenses. So besides the licenses and all the authorizations and the enrollments you need to do to run a business as such, you also have the bureaucracy regarding environmental licenses, which are needed, of course, and they are relevant, but it's also time consuming. So sometimes it may get really frustrating to install a factory in Brazil. Trying to understand Brazil like they understand their own country. So this is the first and the general mistake companies do. It's really different conducting business in Brazil and in the US, or in Germany, or in Sweden, or in Denmark. We have a very specific business environment, not only regarding the whole taxes and the governmental bureaucracy, but also regarding labor issues, also regarding the decision on where to set up your company and where to hire your directors. If you can bring directors from abroad at all, if that's recommendable. I think this is the first main mistake. Trying to understand Brazil like in the same way they understand their own country. This is the first mistake. The second mistake I would mention would be regarding disregarding the logistics as a main factor. Brazil is a continental country and should be understood as such. And in this sense, the decision of incorporating a company in Manaus, in Amazonas, to benefit of a special tax regime should not disconsider that the consumers are more in the south. So you have to bring your products to the south, and the logistics is very costly in Brazil. We do not have a very broad railway system. So you should consider that normally you can only bring things to your consumers by road. So it's costly. Another common mistake when people come to Brazil is to take a look only on the most common taxes. For example, when you come to Brazil, your biggest issue will not be income tax normally. This is in all the world the most relevant tax, and the taxes people worry more about and companies worry more about are the income taxes. Despite being a relevant share of a company taxation in Brazil, the fact is that in Brazil taxation is not much higher than in other developed countries. Actually, it's even lower than in many countries, many European countries, the most part of the European countries. So the really difficult issue in Brazil is tax compliance. So the effective tax burden, it is relevant, but the complex issue is tax compliance. Not how much time and how much it costs to pay taxes. So we were elected, Brazil was elected by the World Economic Forum, is being elected for many years as the most complex country to pay taxes. The accounting departments in international, in huge corporations are also huge. They have a lot of people working just to comply with the taxation. So this is also a very common mistake, to disregard the costs associated to tax compliance. Other common issue is to assume that the legislation will stay as it is. As strange as it may sound, tax legislation in Brazil changes a lot. So we basically have tax changes every day. I'm not saying that many of the vast majority of these changes are critical, but there are changes anyway, and the companies need to be aware of them. So many times you have even to hire people only to be informed of these tax changes. Brazil is a company that is keen to consume novelties. So in Brazil, Brazil is known around the world for giving better returns, better profits than other countries in other countries when we talk about novelties. Technology, for example. the prices of products in Brazil, the returns associated to novelties in Brazil tend to be higher than in other countries. Luxury goods. Luxury goods is also an emerging market. So there is a whole branch of the business leaders in Brazil turning the eyes now to luxury goods from all around the world. So, and this is also connected to the economic expansion Brazil is currently experiencing. And this consumption, this luxury goods also mean foods and beverages. For instance, there are some markets, like the beverage market, for example, is a market that's now developing more and more in Brazil with a more relevant share of imported products, which are different from the products normally consumed by Brazilians. So basically everything that turns to be a novelty, both in technology and design. Brazilian people are keen to consume this kind of products. Even though Brazil is normally understood as a country that taxes a lot and on a very varied form, there are very good business opportunities in Brazil. So companies tend to get good profits when working properly, and well, there are opportunities. The main recommendation someone could have when dealing with Brazilian taxes is also to be aware with tax compliance on how costly it could be. Besides understanding the multiple kinds of taxes Brazil has, we should also be aware of tax compliance, which is a major factor. And well, try to avoid the mistake of disregarding the whole Brazilian environment and trying to understand that doing business here is not the same as doing business in other countries. Not only on a cultural level, but also because the legal background is different. The labor background is different, and so these topics could become issues. But when well done with, they could turn to be your major point when dealing with your competitors.